welcome to Krush House. I'm Frank Nicotero, and I am thrilled to welcome now a permanent fixture in the Krush House, the one and only Sean Salisbury.
Frank, I cannot wait. I'm so pumped up about this. And you folks out there that are watching this, and don't tell your friends, this is the best show on the planet. You're going to get more information and inside information and a lot of shit talking that you're never going to believe on this show. I'm pumped up for our guest today too, Frank.
Also joining us is Baywatch beauty Angelica Bridges. Angelica, you ready for the show?
Is it time for the show? Oh no, I'm really not ready.
Okay, we'll check back with you later. But as Mr. Sean Salisbury just mentioned, our guest today, I love this guy. I mean, talk about left-handed pitchers that could throw some heat. You got Roy Hobbs, and you also have this man who played for over a decade in the major leagues. Please welcome Wild Thing, Mitch Williams. Let's talk about baseball's unwritten rules. Mitch, you know, Tony La Russa, this whole incident with Yermin Mercedes, where he hit the homer off the 3-0 pitch off a position player for the Twins. They were up 15-4. He comes out and calls it a big mistake, and it was foolish. What is your take on Tony La Russa saying this about his own players?
I think Tony needs to step into the 2000s. I'm an old school guy, but I'm telling you, if I'm a hitter and you put a position player on the mound, of course I'm going to try and feast on him. You can't ask players to not hit. I'm sorry, it just don't work that way.
Mitch, I'm so glad to have you on this show for a lot of different reasons, not the least of which I know I'm going to get a great opinion out of you. I'm with you. I'm old school too, Mitch. We're in the same era and watching you pitch and when I was playing.
Yep.
This old school stuff, unwritten rules are fine. But unwritten rules are horseshit too. I'm getting tired of them because there are some that are good, but if you're going to disrespect me at the plate, and as a young, excitable rookie, and you're going to throw me a position player to pitch, what is the difference between a 3-0 count and a 3-1 count on respect? Longtime baseball lover, longtime baseball player. I want to hear it from you because I understand unwritten rules, but isn't there a point in time, as you mentioned, get into the 2000s where unwritten rules need to be changed as well, Mitch?
Well, they have to be. And the way I look at it, Sean, it's simple. You change the rules of the game, the actual rules of the game, Mr. Commissioner, which I can't stand the rules he's changed. He's taken all the excitement out of the game, running over the catcher, breaking up the double play at second base. These are plays that the game was built on. So those unwritten rules, they're gone. Because teams, you can have an 8-run lead in the 7th inning, and that ain't safe anymore. Right. Because the game is built around the home run and feast or famine. There is no more putting a rally together. It's just a bunch of home runs surrounded by guys that happen to walk. Because strikeouts are way up, which is, for me, it makes the game unwatchable. Right. It really does. There is no more hit and run. You don't see safety squeeze bunts. You don't see squeeze bunts. This is the direction this commissioner has wanted this game to go. It is completely skewed to the fantasy sports player. So when you take away the actual rules, you're taking away the unwritten rules too, and Tony needs to understand that. You put a position player on the mound, the way teams are struggling to hit this year, if you put a position player on the mound, everybody's going to try and take advantage of that because they all suck right now.
Right. And you know, in 2000 when Tony La Russa was managing the Cardinals, one of his position players or one of his hitters actually hit a homer off a position player. He didn't say anything back then. So it's like all of a sudden, Tony, why do you have a problem with that? And how about this? How about not backing up his own team when Tyler Duffy for the Twins threw at Mercedes the next day and he said, yeah, I understand that. I have no problem with that. He's not backing his own players right now.
No. And that's the thing. I honestly, I had a lot of respect for Tony as a player that played against him and had to deal with the managing style that he brought to the table. Tony needs to realize everything he's criticizing, he's done before himself. So just let it go. The rules of the game have changed. Therefore, the unwritten rules of the game have changed.
And Mitch, along with that, with the different eras and decades that Tony's managed, and I'm with you. Hall of Fame manager, did some great things. Micromanager to the point of driving the opposing team nuts, right?
Yes.
And things change as his players change. And you mentioned got to get into the 2000s. Mitch, I got a real problem as a former player, and hell, I threw enough interceptions to be criticized. You should have been able to do that to me. But if a coach airing me out in public or a play, I don't believe in the dirty laundry thing. If you want to cuss me out and fight with me in the clubhouse or in the locker room and say you suck ass, I'm in. But I don't care if Tony even still believes, Mitch, that throwing behind his player was okay after what happened the day before. If Tony actually believes that, you still don't say it. Because on a young team that's a rising team that can mash, that are looking to a guy who's in his 70s, who's got to relearn, and even Tony admitted early this year, he doesn't even know all the rules for a micromanaging guy and a Hall of Fame manager. So if he's going to keep that respect, Mitch, isn't he on a slippery slope? Put it this way. If they were playing like the Minnesota Twins, people would be asking for La Russa's job already. Yes. Already. Now that they're in first place, Moncada, and with Robert out, and they got Abreu hitting. I mean, they're loaded, and they're getting great pitching, as you know. So with that in mind, how in the hell can Tony say that? And Mitch, if you're on his team and you're a young, impressionable player, aren't you watching closely to see if he's got your back every friggin' day?
Oh, yeah. That would be something I look at. And Tony's never been a guy, in my opinion, that has ever stood up for his players the way it should be done. I look at some of the things Tony did in this game. You can thank the 3-out, 3-run save. That's Tony and Dennis Eckersley. I've never seen anything like it. You look back on Goose Gossage's career and how many 3-inning saves he had. How many 3-inning saves did Eckersley have? You can count them on one hand. I would be willing to bet that. But Tony changed the game in that way. But the game has since again changed, and Tony does have to relearn it. And he has to learn it quick because he's got to pass it on down to the rookies and young players that are on his team so they learn the game the right way. The problem is, Sean, I don't think anything about this game is being taught the right way. I know hitting absolutely is being taught the wrong way. You're making guys rich to teach your guys how to fail, and that's all it comes down to.
All right, let's check back in with Angelica. What are you doing anyways?
Oh, come on, you guys. It takes me a while to get ready.
Okay, I hear you. All right, we'll give you some more time.
Mitch, you're in the circle. You've pitched in monster games, long career, successful career. Do you get the sense that most of your era guys, our era, Frank, I think you're a little younger, but you know the baseball we watched, and this isn't get off my lawn because I am old school, but I like a lot of new era stuff. I do. But the way it's being taught, it's the same in football. We can get to that as well. NBA as well. We can pick and choose and nitpick at a lot of things. But Mitch, you think that guys who played in your era feel the same way you do about the game?
Oh, yeah. I don't recognize the game. That's my issue with it. When you take a game that's been as great as baseball has for over a century, and you come in and you start making wholesale changes to the rules of that game, this is my issue with this commissioner. He is catering to one generation. Major League Baseball is built over generation after generation after generation. That's why it's maintained its popularity, because you got great-grandfathers that have gone to games with their great-grandkids and so on and so forth. That is not the case anymore. It is built, the game has been designed to appease the fantasy baseball guy. That's what it comes down to.
And I think it all started with the commercial campaign, Chicks Dig the Long Ball. That ruined it, right? That was right about when it started it, because everyone's trying to hit a home run,
yeah,
right?
Let's find out how bad the chicks really dig a strikeout, because that's how you're going to have to go out there and get a date. I struck out 11 times in 12 at-bats. You want to go out? There you go.
I can guarantee chicks aren't digging the short ball. That's for damn sure. In every way, shape, and form. Hey, Frank, let me ask you too, Frank. And Mitch, I want you both. I was thinking about this. And going along with what Mitch said, and Frank, you being an old school baseball guy as well, just judging from the photos over both your right and left shoulder. We talk about integrity of the game. Why are we having, in a doubleheader, 7 innings? They get paid enough to play 2. Okay, they do. And number 2 is we're putting a guy on second base in extra innings. Are we? It's embarrassing.
I said this, Sean, when that rule came out. I can promise you, if I walk on the field and no one's hit and there's a guy standing on second base, you ain't putting that run next to my name. And you ain't putting that law. I could come in that situation, give up a fly ball to right field, have the guy tag up, get to third, and then get the next guy out, and I would have given up a run. There ain't no way I'm taking that L, and there ain't no way I'm taking that run on my ERA. That guy didn't exist. To me, it's making an absolute farce of the game.
Yeah, and then Madison Bumgarner throws a 7-inning no-hitter And
they don't want to recognize
it as a no-hitter.
Well, guess what? You guys made the game 7 innings.
Yeah.
What's he supposed to do? Go out and throw 2 more to make it official? You made the game 7 innings. If he threw a no-hitter, it's a no-hitter.
And speaking of no-hitters, Clayton Kershaw yesterday said it's ruining baseball. What do you think? There's too many no-hitters, right, Mitch?
I agree. How exciting is it for fans? Okay, they're hitting a lot of home runs, but there's no one on base. There's a ton of solo home runs. It is not entertainment if you don't have guys at the plate that are actively swinging the bat and not just at pitches down the middle. And I just spent the better part of 2 days convincing my 17-year-old son of that. He's got a tremendous eye at the plate. He's walked 25 times in 13 games. I said, but you have to start swinging the bat because you have to be able to hit a multitude of pitches, not just the ball down the middle. So that's what they're teaching now. Find your pitch, come out of your shoes, and their approach and the way they're doing it has made their swing so long, there's no way they can get to certain pitches. The ball on the inner third of the plate to some guys is absolutely unhittable, regardless of what they do, because everything is being taught that you lift up on the ball rather than go down to it. And it's just wrong.
We don't say, hey, man, great shot the opposite way in the gap. We say, man, what was his launch angle?
Exactly. What is launch angle?
Yeah. How hard did it come off his bat? Mitch, and you make a great point, Frank. I love the question, too. As I'm sitting here thinking about baseball and now it's just an outs and out. Moving the runner over, well, that's not important. If I hit the ball in the upper tank or I strike out, who cares, man? It's not that, because that's how they're getting paid. And so with this no-hitter thing, and Frank and Mitch, you both chime in on this, is Clayton Kershaw ruining it? I don't know. But I can tell you this, we don't give the no-hitter as much credit as we used to. It's another no-hitter, back-to-back.
The strikeout.
Right, and we're going to see more. And why? We don't see teams like the Astros' first 5 hitters all over 300 or the way the White Sox, the run differential. We see 3 solo home runs, you lose 8-4, nobody cares. With the swing and miss, guys are going to say, I'm taking my hacks. I don't care if I go 0 for 5 and strike out 4 times. I'm taking my hacks. So even guys that may not even have their best stuff, Mitch, they're going to be capable of throwing a no-hitter because guys are missing the ball by 1.5 feet, right? Well, in their swing. Not saying they're not good. The different approach has created so much more the ability, and the opposite of that is why aren't pitchers getting later into games with all this swing and miss, Mitch? I'm
because God forbid they throw 102 pitches. I threw this is a God's honest truth. I pitched an A ball. I'm pitching for the Rangers in Hagerstown. I got taken out of a no-hitter in the 5th inning. I was losing 2-1. I had thrown 155 pitches. They didn't take me out because of pitch count. They just took me out because I just walked the bases loaded again. But this is what I look at in the game today. And I literally, it was all I could do to just not snap watching this. I was watching the Marlins play the Phillies the other night. Diaz, a middle infielder for the Marlins, who's hitting a crisp 136, has a 3-0 count on him, and he flies out to left field. What Mattingly is doing in that dugout, I have no idea, because if I was managing that team, I would have gone out to first base, grabbed him by the arm, and drug his ass in the dugout and say, now you go out and figure out why 136 hitters do not swing 3-0. It's absolutely absurd, some of the stuff that's being done in the game.
But, Frank, the only way we'd let him swing 3-0 is if it was a non-pitcher pitching to him, right?
But, pitch count is something that bothers me. Look, I'm a Pirates fan. We have a lot of young guys. We had this guy that we got from the Yankees, Yajor or whatever, had 5 innings of one-hit ball with 56 pitches. They pulled him. Now, my favorite baseball stat, an unbreakable record, I believe it was Louis Tiant versus Nolan Ryan. They both pitched like 13 or 14 innings. Both pitchers threw over 250 pitches. This is documented. That is an unbreakable rule. Yes, Cy Young's 511 wins will never be broke, but Nolan Ryan throwing over 250 pitches, that, like, the manager would be run out of town by the GM, right? I mean,
that's the thing about it. And nothing for nothing, but if you teach your arm to throw I threw a baseball during my career, during the season, every single day as hard as I could throw it.
Wow. Every
day I was at the field, I threw as hard as I could throw, whether it was in the outfield or in the mound, in the bullpen, or in a game. These guys today, they throw. Joe Girardi has a rule here in Philly. He does not want to pitch any reliever on back-to-back days. Well, I'm sorry, but when you get to the big leagues, you've got 13 pitchers on the staff now. When I came up, it was 10. My rookie year, I threw in 80 games. My second year, I threw in 85. Every day I didn't pitch, I threw a 50-pitch bullpen. The first 3 years of my career. They don't ask kids to throw anymore. Therefore, they don't. Therefore, mechanically, if the 100-pitch count, this is the absurdity of it. You'll have a guy go out there. Sean, you don't wake up every day and feel the same.
Right.
So how do you put a hard number on a pitch count? There were days I could go out there and throw till breakfast.
Right.
There's other days I go out there and just could not find it. Why would we let a pitcher throw 100 pitches with bad mechanics when there's no reason for it?
Right.
They're either taking them out when they shouldn't be taking them out. The other team will let you know when a starter should be pulled.
Yes, and Mitch, you're so right, because when I hear this, got to get reps in, well, every rep ain't a good rep. Okay,
No.
So if you're repping bad reps, you're repping bad mechanics. And if you're preaching bad mechanics, you get into bad arm angles. And if you're preaching bad mechanics and bad arm angles, we get Tommy John surgery or we get shoulder and rotator cuff. And before you know it, you're in a chase mode. Now, and it just seems logical to me. Now, listen, I may not, I know 2 + 2 = 4 and not 5. But Mitch, to validate and agree 100% with what you're saying, if I only threw 8 balls in training camp as a quarterback or 50 throws a day, I don't know how the arm lengthens if you're not lengthening it within between. That's why Nolan Ryan was so good. Nolan Ryan in between starts threw footballs in the outfield with Tom House.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so when it comes to baseball, it seems, listen, if you're going to run a marathon, which I'm not going to run a marathon because I have no interest in running a marathon, God bless those who do. But if I'm training and I run 3 miles a day, Mitch and Frank, for 20 days, am I prepared to run a marathon?
This is the exact example I've used, Sean, and it's the absolute truth. You do not train for a marathon by running sprints. Same thing with a pitcher's arm. You do not train your arm to go out there and throw 100 pitches by throwing 25 in a bullpen session. Go out and work at your craft. If you don't want to work, this is what I loved about Nolan. When he was at Texas, you're either going to pitch every day or I'm going to find some bitches that will. That's how Nolan handled it.
Right, yeah, Nolan, you go out to the mound, guys like you, Mitch, Dibbs is my buddy, Nolan Ryan, guys like that, you walk out to the mound, before the pitching coach or the manager gets there, shaking your head like, dude, I'm at 90 pitches. Don't you dare cross that first base line and come
That's
get my ass.
exactly right.
Right.
I had 3 back-to-back games here in Philly as a reliever. I threw an inning on back-to-back-to-back nights. I threw 100 pitches in 3 innings and gave up 1 run.
I love it.
They didn't care.
That's all. Exactly. You got the job done.
I honestly believe the Texas Rangers sent me to winter ball in 1985 to see if they could blow me up. Because one night I came in, I threw the 8th and 9th inning, came to the ballpark the next day, I was friggin' starting. This is how it used to work. They're going to say, okay, this kid's going to get better or he is going to blow the hell up. And they were fine with either outcome.
And, Trevor Bauer gets a lot of heat for his outside of the box thinking, right? But Trevor Bauer, he throws long toss every day, doesn't he?
Yeah, but Frank, that's the thing. Long tossing and long throwing are 2 different things.
Okay.
The way Bauer does it, where he gets on the third baseline and raises up like this and casts the ball 250 feet, at no time are you ever in that position, throwing position, on a mound. If you want to throw long toss, grab a football, go out and stand 35 yards apart and throw it as hard as you can throw it mechanically right, and then pick up a baseball and go to 120 feet and throw it as hard as you can throw it. That's long throwing.
And Mitch, you are so right. I'm not a robotic guy, but I am a mechanics fanatic with quarterbacks, pitchers. Rinse and repeat. Look at the great ones. Scherzer, the way Garrett Cole, the efficiency. You know this, Mitch. It's the same thing in the efficiency and the mechanics. And you're right. Listen, when I'm training a quarterback and I say, once you hit the field, we can laugh and have a good time. But don't give me the throwing when you're throwing and falling away. We got to simulate what we're doing. Sit, throw, make sure you're getting in the slot so you're used to doing it, or it's wasted repetitions on your arm. And every now and then you're going to have to throw out a slot, or Mitch, you drop down, or somebody for a different angle to show the hitter, but you don't live there. You don't live there. So
I looked at it. I saw it here last year, Sean, in Carson Wentz.
Right.
They're talking about his mechanics. I'm sorry. I will put my knowledge of throwing anything up against anybody's knowledge.
Agreed.
And I watched Carson last year, and I'm sorry, you cannot make throws in the NFL if you ain't stepping to where you're supposed to be throwing the football.
Once in a while, it's the aberration, Mitch. You got to live. Look at Brady. Physically, 50 guys in the league at his position are better than him.
Sure.
At 40. But you know what? Fastball still ramped up in the 90s. Accuracy and his mechanics are friggin' flawless. You know why? Because he grinds on him. He knows to stay out of his weaknesses and stay into his strengths. Mitch, I want to get to a psychological side of this. And for me, at times in my career, and I see pitchers, or when a guy gets dressed down by his manager, or when he gives up a home run or strikes out in a clutch situation. We've seen it all through, right? Going through, and what the Astros are going through, the boos and how all the emotional stuff that goes into it. I'm curious, you as a guy who's a closer and you in big moments and won some, lost some, but won many of them. But when you go through it, I know when I threw a pick, when I was going through my most difficult times, Mitch, I couldn't get over a bad play. You know, I early in my career I did. Then I had a knee injury, and I said, well, the knee must be responsible for me psychologically. And there was a time when the rear view mirror was bigger than the windshield, and it caused me, gosh, Sean, get out of it. And when I got out of it and hey, just do what you know how to do, it was good again. So I'm wondering, for a pitcher, for you, for guys you see, how important the psychological mental side. When you give up something, blow a save, or win a save, the good and the bad of it,
right? How
did you overcome it? And what would you tell a guy who was in your position when duress hits, how to handle it?
For a closer, it's really pretty simple. You have to have an extremely short memory.
And big balls, right, Mitch? You just got it, right?
Big balls and no fear. It's like I've taught all my kids. I have a 17-year-old now that plays football and baseball. And I told him, I said, you cannot fear failure, but you better have a fucking healthy hatred of it. Because that's how I think it is. I think you have to hate failing before you can avoid it.
In your biggest struggle, what was the next day like? After coming out of a game, what was the next day like? How'd you deal with it immediately when you were playing? You've learned over the years when you were playing, same personality. How'd you deal with it the next day? Was it just, hey, fuck, it happened, I'm going to move on? How did that happen for you?
Yesterday is yesterday.
Fair enough.
That's how I always looked at it.
Right.
And I could not wait to get on a mound again. That's why I loved relieving. I loved being a closer, loved being at the back end of a bullpen, because when I signed, I was a starter.
Right.
And I'd start every fifth day. I'd start, suck, and then spend four days trying to figure out how I was going to suck again in my next start. As a reliever, it was as close to what I wanted to be as an everyday player.
Right.
I wish I'd have never been a pitcher. I wanted to play first base and swing, but that's not how it worked out. Leave yesterday in the past. You can't change it. So I always came out and did enough work the following day to make me forget yesterday.
Simplistic is the best way to do it when you're dealing with adversity. I mean,
yes.
I felt that way. When you try to we start marking down stuff and shit uses up our head. Before you know it, you've done it 3 days in a row instead of just let it go. It's great advice.
That's exactly right. If you let your last at bat, your last pitch affect your next one, you're never going to have success in this game.
Mitch, you talk about yesterday and being able to forget it quickly, but something like in '93 in the series against Joe Carter where you don't get on the mound the next day, how did you handle that?
It was, for me, it's like I said right after the game. If there was anybody in that clubhouse that could handle the situation that I was in, it was me. Because I was made to do this. I'm going to go out, give everything I got. If it's good enough, it's good enough. If it ain't, it'll be good enough tomorrow.
Hey, Mitch, I know where my rock bottom was. I didn't mean to interrupt because it's a great point that Frank's making. I know where mine was. Where was yours, and how'd you get out of it?
Mine was in Chicago, I guess. And I was only there 2 years. My first year, I finished 8th in the Cy Young voting and 10th in the MVP voting. Come back the next year, I tear my PCL covering first base. It happened on June 12th. They told me I was going to miss 18 months. And I'm like, no, I ain't. I finished the inning. I had bases loaded and 2 outs with Howard Johnson up. I went 3-0 on him. And I said, well, this is a pretty shitty spot to bail and bring a reliever in. Ended up striking him out, walked over the dugout, stepped on the step, fell on my nose into the bottom of the dugout. And when I came back from that and they weren't using me to close, that was the lowest point of my career because I had just had a really good year the year before. The Cubs were not playing real well in 1990. So when I came back after the All-Star break, I had incentives in my contract for saves. Well, naturally, when your team's not winning, your team's also not going to give you an opportunity to make extra money. So that was a low point. It was very frustrating.
Wow. Well, Mitch, listen, we know you're short on time, and as a closer, you were a home run. And speaking of home runs, Mitch, 33% of your career hits were homers. You had 1 home run and 3 hits. Just tell me real quick, who'd you hit the homer off of? Take me through the at-bat.
Well, it was I came into a game against the Mets, and Zim obviously didn't double switch. Zim would get caught every now and then. And so I ended up having to hit off Don Ossie. Every one of my at-bats was off a closer. So it wasn't a whole lot of fun. And I got up there, and I could hit in high school. I still hold the state record for home runs, I think, in Oregon. But he threw the first pitch so far by me, it wasn't even funny. So I cheated my ass off on the next pitch and counted on the fact that I thought he was going to throw another strike. He did, left it out over the plate, and I hit it out of the opposite field.
Okay, before we go, Frank, I got to get this in. Do you mind?
Yeah, of course.
Mitch, two things. Athletes are superstitious. I'm going to get to that last. The nickname Wild Thing. Who and we know where the
Charlie had it first.
Right, but who gave that to you?
Calvin Schiraldi.
Calvin Schiraldi did.
Yeah, we went and saw the
and
movie.
And it stuck right off the bat, right?
Pardon me?
It stuck right off the bat for you?
Oh, yeah, they beat it to death. As soon as they heard Calvin call me that, they jumped on it with the Cubs and then in Philly. So, yeah, it was something that I would like to beat the hell out of Calvin for.
Have you and Charlie ever talked about it? Did you and Charlie ever talk?
He called me because he did some interview saying that I claimed that I was the original Wild Thing. So I, on a phone call with him, I said, look, you dumb son of a bitch, I've always said you were first. I never claimed to be first. And to be honest, I don't like the goddamn thing, so take it back.
Okay, so you don't like it. Okay, so superstitions. Every one of us got a quirk, man. Clubhouse, what you ate. What would be one that if you told people, you're not going to believe I did this shit before a game? What is it?
Honest to God, I really didn't have any
superstitions.
The only thing I really had was when I went to the bullpen, I never had my shoes tied.
And it had to happen. You were cognizant of it.
Well, yeah, because I pitched in a 9.5. I wear a 12.
Ooh.
I hated my foot sliding around on the inside of a cleat when I was pitching. So I wore 9.5s, and my feet today are paying for it, believe me.
Yeah, your toes are curled up like this, right?
My second toe is about that long, and it's scrunched up to nothing. But I wasn't superstitious other than that.
There you go.
Oh, man. Well, Mitch, listen, it's a thrill. It was a thrill having you on the show. I'm a huge baseball fan. You would dominate the Pirates in '89. That was the worst season for the Cubs.
I got hit in a gourd in '89, though, in Pittsburgh.
You what again?
Jeff King hit a line drive off my skull at 102 miles an hour in Pittsburgh.
Oh, overall #1 pick, Jeff King. I love Jeff King. Wow, sorry
Don't
that
throw him a
happened,
fastball down, by the way. If you do, get really small.
And Mitch, this has been fun, man. I hope we get to do it a million times. I love it, brother. It's been awesome.
You bet, guys. I can't wait till next week.
All right, somebody cue the Trogs Wild Thing. Mitch Williams, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Angelica, we're pretty much done here on this episode of Krush House. Are you still getting ready?
I'm not ready.
All right. You know what, Angelica? We'll just see you next week, all right? On behalf of Sean Salisbury, we'd like to thank Mitch Williams for being such a great guest, and we'll be back with an all-new show next week on Krush House.